everybody. Almost good afternoon. Thanks for sticking around after church, and thanks for hanging out while we get everything kind of set up. And there was a lot of moving parts. We had bells, we had baptisms. It was Pastor Chris is back. Exciting Sunday morning. And here we are. It's not over yet because Lynda and I are doing some piano duets. So many of you know Lynda Conway. I'm Brian. You know me. She's been an absolute joy to have in our congregation for the last few years. And one of the great things about having Lynda around, along with her being a wonderful person, is that she's willing to play piano duets with me. And we've done a number of these, and whenever we've done them, people have always, the first question has been, when's the next one?
Exactly.
And so we kind of felt like, well, maybe we should do kind of a little program of them. And in doing so, you also get other questions about it, because it's a very sort of unique medium. And so we wanted to kind of take a moment between the different selections that we're playing to talk just a bit about piano duets and collaborative music in this form. And so we kind of tried to brainstorm some talking points, some things that come up when we deal with this form of music. And so what this is called is, it's a piano duet, but it's actually four-hand piano duet. What that means is there's four hands, two of mine, two of hers, on the same piano, on the same keyboard. There's a wealth of literature out there written for piano duets for two pianos, where you need to have two instruments, and if they're grand, you actually will kind of interlock the cutouts, and it's a very different way of playing because you each have your own keyboard. And so one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about with this one is with four-hand piano, there's a whole logistical component that I like to call pinkies, page turns, and pedals. In the sense that you may realize that us piano players are rather independent breeds. We usually work on our own. There's one of us, and there might be a whole slew of singers, there might be a whole band, a big band, but there's usually one piano player. And so we're a little territorial. We got all 88 keys to ourselves. But when you get to a situation like this, we've got to share, and we have to play next. And as piano players, we're used to kind of driving the operation. We're the accompanist. We're providing the time. We play more notes than anybody else, so we can really control where things are going.
The conductors only think they're the ones in charge.
There you go. We can derail them.
Know it's really us, because the choirs follow us. We follow the vocalist, sort of, and so we're kind of like territorial. So we have, to start with, we're not centered at the piano now. We're used to being right at middle C and equally. Now, one of us is down here, and the other one is up here. But sometimes the music is written as though you were sitting in the center. Sometimes the melodies I get, I'm supposed to be playing like I'm in the center, but I'm leaning this way and pushing over on Brian because I'm off center, and it's hard to do. Brian is often playing 2 octaves higher than the music is written. That's partly why he always gets to play the upper.
There's lots of ledger lines. If you've ever driven in Great Britain, you get a sense of what we're dealing with right here. Everything's just you're like, it's a car, but something's off. I'm in the mirror or something. And so, as I mentioned, pinkies is one thing. My left hand and Lynda's right hand often operate in similar ranges. In fact, my right hand is all on its own. I get these top notes to myself. Lynda never goes up there, and I never bother her down way deep in the bass clef. But the notes in the middle, depending where you're in the song, sometimes it's mine, sometimes it's hers.
And sometimes it's like he plays the note, and he better get off of it because I have to play it on the next beat.
Yep. And if I don't, she'll get there. And so elbows, you'll find that elbows play into part of it. You can kind of, whoever has the more prominent role gets to kind of give them a little nudge there. Pedals. Many of us are aware that the piano has pedals underneath it, and the predominant pedal is the one on the far right. It's called the damper pedal. Some people refer to it as the sustain pedal. You hold that down. Go ahead and play a chord, Lynda. Look at that. No hands. You hold that pedal down, and you can enable music to sustain. It's used widely in piano literature.
It's
the pedal. The other ones are there for show. But as piano players, that's my pedal. But there's 2 of us, and how do we do it? And she won.
It's my pedal.
Lynda gets the pedal.
I actually did a little Google search on it because we figured it has to do with the harmony. Most of the harmony is generated from the bass. And the person playing the left hand, the secundo part, the lower notes, is the harmony driver. And so we assumed that was it. That is one of the three reasons. The first reason was that I found was written, most of these duets were started, not necessarily the ones we're playing, but the concept of duets came about in the 1800s. And it was a teacher-student thing, and the teacher often played the secundo, so the teacher controlled the pedal so that the student didn't. But I think part of the real reason is it's physical. My right foot goes right to the pedal. Brian would have to cross over his leg to play it, or play it with
my left foot, which...
So even when Brian is playing, like at the beginning of the piece, when Brian is playing by himself, I'm still the one controlling the pedal, which I almost forgot to do at the beginning. And so he has to trust me that I'm going to pedal and pedal correctly, and I trust that he will not try to usurp my dominance at playing the pedal.
And then the last one of these logistical challenges that we face is page turns. As a piano player, page turns are the bane of your existence. My entire life is one bad page turn. But you learn to cope and figure it out, and you find your way through it. And many of you have seen my sometimes violent ripping across of pages. Sometimes I get tape several pages together and I fling it behind me. You figure out how to negotiate and get through it. Well, now there's two of us, so that should make things easier, and it does. But you still got to kind of work it out. And if you saw in that last one of the page turns was mine, and one of them was Lynda's. And that was something we discussed in our rehearsal, in our preparation for it, based on who was busy, who had a free hand, basically, in that moment. Or if no one has a free hand, because sometimes that just happens to be the case, they expect us to somehow, willingly telekinesis the page over. We got to figure out who's got the least to lose by passing something up. Who can kind of... If I don't play these notes, the music kind of pushes forward.
So in one of the pieces we practiced on Friday, we did not discuss page turns to start with. And we've played we've got one brand new one today, but the others we have played. And we started playing, and we're getting down to the end of the page where the page turn comes, and with about 3 beats left, I realize Brian's not turning the page. Boom! So we will confer at the beginning of each piece today who's doing which page turns, because we don't always remember. And in the new one that we're going to play next, actually, I said I could let go of what I'm doing in the left hand, but because of the style of this particular duet, Brian said, no, you need to keep that going. I'll drop out hand and turn it. So it's different for every piece of music that we play, but we do have to confer and decide who's going to do what, and then remember what we've decided.
Otherwise it's just a game of chicken at the end of every page. Just like, who's going?
And honestly, I'm considerably older than Brian, so the chances of me forgetting are greater, but I find it's mostly him that forgets.
So, Lynda mentioned our next piece, so I thought we could move on to the next piece. And you should have received, on your way in, or as you're sitting, a sheet with a hymn on it. So the pieces that we're playing today are hymns. They're arrangements of hymn tunes and hymn songs. The first one that we just did to bring us in was Blessed Assurance. This next one's called Since Jesus Came Into My Heart. And it's not in our hymnal, which is why I just made a copy for everyone. But so I thought one of the fun things about these duets that I'm going to kind of prime our next little chat about is more of a musical idea of the arranger. What do they do with this hymn tune? When we see music in a hymnal, it's very much designed for people to sing, and the text is very, very dominant. When we play these songs as piano duets with no vocalist, we're mindful of the text, but it's not being overtly presented. And so the arranger has a bit more flexibility to kind of decide, what do I want to do with this? How do I want to take this? Do I want to take a more traditional route, or do I want to kind of do something a bit different? And so this next hymn tune, you will hear, the arranger took a very, very fun journey with it. So I thought we'd sing through the tune first.
This is a good Baptist hymn. I'm the one who brought this one to the choice here. But it's a great hymn, and interestingly enough, the text to the first hymn, Blessed Assurance, and the text to this song, Since Jesus Came Into My Heart, were written by the same lady, Fanny J. Crosby, who was blind virtually since birth. And she wrote both of these hymns, the text for them. So, are we going to sight sing?
Yeah, let's sight sing. I'll let you play a little intro, and we'll all sing. We're just going to do the first verse and the refrain, just to kind of so we can present this, because we wanted to do this because the arrangement is really awesome, but it's great. Without the context of the hymn, you might not necessarily connect the two. So I thought by singing it through, we could have a better appreciation for the duet we're going to play in just a moment. So. Lynda and I are going to play an arrangement by Mark Hayes of Since Jesus Came Into My Heart.
Should we tell them?
I think we should surprise them. We should surprise them.
Okay.
We should surprise them.
We'll be.
They'll be with us. They're going to enjoy it. Oh, right,
You're
yeah.
doing this-
I got the
You're
first.
doing all of
I think I'm doing all of them in this one, yeah. Yep. See if I remember.
Little Chicago in there too.
Right, and so we were talking when we were rehearsing. We were like, "Oh my goodness, there's a little that's straight out of the musical Chicago. That's straight out of The Entertainer." And that was, Mark Hayes, the arranger, brilliant guy, and knows that. He's like, I'm going to take this, I'm going to set it like it's a ragtime tune. And so by drawing upon these real these tropes and these common devices and the language and vocabulary of that music, it immediately kind of puts you there. And yet, it's still the hymn. It's still that song. It's still that tune. And it's as we work on these, it's one of the fun things whenever we're kind of working on a new duet like this. There is always that, where are they going to go with this? And I find that especially with instrumental music, you really have that, like, it just kind of opens up even further for you to just explore and really kind of reinvent some of these songs. One of the things that we negotiate when we're doing it, I'm sure you've kind of noticed a bit, is that in good duet writing, I should say, as Lynda mentioned, this form sort of began with a teacher playing a secondo, playing an accompaniment part to a student playing the melody. Laura Cooper can attest to this. We were jamming out some This Land Is Your Land the other day, and I was rocking the secondo for her. But in a lot of duet writing, they'll trade back and forth. Who has the melody? Who has the lead? And that's something that can be fun for you guys to listen to. I think that some of it you can sort of almost visually see. I mean, you can see when there's plays where I just stop playing, right? She just takes over. But there's other moments where these kind of call and response, or I might have the main melody, and yet she has these little counter lines and these little responses to what I'm playing.
Or I play a little of the melody, and then he picks up the next phrase of the
Right.
melody. And we have to know where the melody is, because when we practice, I have to say, the first time we play through them, we just play loud, we don't know if we've got the right tempo, we don't observe the dynamics, we just play. And then we go, oh yeah, well, to play some dynamics here, we ought to be soft, get louder, get louder. You've got the melody there, or I've got the melody down low. I can't bring it out anymore. You need to soften up because these notes up here are so bright. So we have to negotiate how actually to interpret the music that's on the printed page, because it gives you a lot of guidelines. Brian and I were talking about this on Friday. Not everybody who plays duets can play them musically and well together. Now, I'm not trying to boast, but Brian and I feel music alike. We feel musically, and we don't tell each other what we're going to do. It's not like, oh, I think I'm going to take a little nuance here or a little something here. We found out, Brian made some notations in one piece of music one time, and I thought, that's the exact same notation I use to myself when I know that I want to do a nuance, but I don't really want to make it go slower. I just want to take a little liberty. It's the exact same thing. And Brian and I feel the music kind of together. Now, this morning in Handbells, Chris. Great smile when she plays, right? Brian and I don't always have that ability.
We have poker faces?
We do. We feel the music, and we're very impassioned about playing it, but maybe it doesn't always show on our face. Now, I think you could see how much we enjoyed that, because we got our whole bodies into playing that, and I think you guys enjoyed it. And I loved it. They laughed.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of, because it was that kind of piece of music that, yeah, participate with us in making music. And Brian talked about the texts. I am so driven by the text that when I think of I'm always thinking of the text when I'm playing. I'm also thinking of all the notes, and sometimes you make
the pedals of the page turns.
Well, no, sometimes it's like when you make a mistake, it's never where you think it's going to be. And but I'm always thinking of the text and trying to express the hymn itself. And I'm hoping that while you're listening, maybe the words are in your mind. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. You're thinking, and I'm hoping that then how we interpret, you feel the passion we feel for what we believe as Christians coming through what we do on the piano.
Yeah, and Lynda had mentioned the bell choir, which rang this morning, which was great. And you all saw me standing out front doing this stuff. And it may not always sound like it. Sometimes they kind of go rogue and make their own choices. But it's set up that they're intended to be following me. And I'm the director, I'm the conductor, I'm the leader. And so the music is focused that way. You go to the Albany Symphony. The conductor out front is the one that's driving the whole thing. Everyone is watching them and following them. Lynn and I are both accompanists. If I'm accompanying a soloist, a solo violin, a solo singer, the soloist is the lead, and it's my job, it's our job as accompanists, to follow them and support them, so that the soloist is what's driving everything. This setup is very different. We are truly democratic here. It's not that I'm leading this and Lynda's following me, and it's not that she's telling me what to do. It is, and as she mentioned, there are certain elements of what we do that we discuss and plan ahead of time. Oh, let's do a big rallentando there. Oh, let's make sure we get that diminuendo there. But there's a lot of other things where we are feeling it together, and I often find that it's the breath that really does it. In fact, if you have the opportunity to see often chamber ensembles, a string quartet, a woodwind quintet, doesn't have a conductor. They don't have a leader. And they are more democratic. And oftentimes, if you watch and listen, you will see inhale will cue so much in music. And what's nice about it is it's very subtle, so that you're not, the audience isn't like, oh, here they go. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's through that breath that they're doing it. And I find that Lynn and I, next to each other, I think both...
We're breathing.
We're breathing together.
And they're cued. It's like we feel the music, there's a breath there, but it's how we give kind of audible or visual cues, too. Especially in the next piece that we're going to play, which is a much quieter piece. When we were playing it the other day, and we had sort of talked about this, but when we got down to the end, I have a series of 3 chords, Brian has some eighth notes, and we're slowing down. I noticed, as I'm looking at the music, but I'm noticing our hands were doing the same exact motion, which when you play piano, that lifting off of the keys is a natural piano motion, but it was a conducting motion also. And we were both doing it. So if you notice at the end of this piece, those of you who can see our hands, you might see it. I don't know if we'll do it today, but I just saw that we had that lifting and breathing going on with our hands, which is a conducting motion because we're both conductors as well as accompanists. We're performers. We've done the singing. So we're accustomed to being in charge, but also following. Pianists are very domineering people because we are in charge. And I'm not joking when I say that choir directors think they're in charge, because a lot of times the kids just, at school, I accompany at the middle school, they follow what the piano player is doing before they're watching their teacher conduct. And we find that we're doing that, breathing and conducting without anything being said between us. This is part of what I just told Brian, that we feel the music. We are very compatible playing together. And not everybody who plays duets, and as he said, in string quartets, it's a feeling that you have, and that's an intangible quality. I cannot describe it. I can't explain it. It's just, we mesh when we play music.
I think we both having been the conductor, the director, the driver of music, we have that in us, and we're also have the accompanist, and so we're sympathetic and we can kind of listen and respond. So, should we play another one?
I think so.
All right, so we're going to continue. This is an arrangement, another one by Mark Hayes, so the same arranger.
He's kind of our favorite.
He writes really well for this.
He knows how to write well for piano, solo as well as all of these duets. Only the first one was by a different composer, and it's a good one, but I personally don't think it measures up to the Mark Hayes arrangements.
So this is My Shepherd Will Supply My Need.
Okay. So
I got the first.
You got the first, and I think you got the second.
I got that one too. Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
That suits me.
So we thought we'd give a chance for anyone that wanted to ask any questions, if you had anything that you were curious about. Rick?
So last week, or last month, you were telling us on the hymns, there's I'm probably getting this wrong, treble clef and bass clef.
Yeah.
So are there 4?
They're not. There are other clefs. That's a great question. There's a clef called an alto clef that viola players typically read from. There's a clef called a tenor clef that when bassoons and cellos and trombones play really high, sometimes they'll switch into a tenor clef. Not very common. I don't like them. I know how to read them. I understand, but it's always a bit of a labor. But so with this, we just do treble and bass clefs. However, my part is almost exclusively treble clef. So even my left hand is reading in treble clef because I'm spending the whole time north of middle C.
I get a lot of bass clef, but I also get a lot of treble clef. So I'm playing more both clefs, as opposed to Brian playing primarily all treble clef.
And then often, like mine, are treble clef, and then there's a bunch of ledger lines above the treble clef, and then there's ledger lines, and they put an 8 VA, which says, oh, go an octave higher. And
or even higher.
15 MA, which means go 2 octaves higher than this. So all that kind of stuff to push me up there. When you hear Lynda come up and sort of take the lead more in that, what would be for her
I'm
the
playing
higher range,
both clefs.
her right hand is usually in the treble clef at that point. But good question. Ginny?
I just wanted to share what it's like to play an organ duet.
Yes, I have those
We're
too.
both sitting on the bench. One has the swell top, and
Oh,
the other had the great bottom. I don't know how other people do it, which means you're crossing out much further.
no. Couldn't do that.
And then the pedals to negotiate?
Only one pedal board,
Yeah.
which means most of my pedals were on the right, but occasionally I had to enter her territory and she entered.
Yeah, so the point that Ginny makes.
You have to play stops and pistons, and I don't even remember who did the great swell of expression.
Right. Yeah, and so
It's really crazy. You're shooting stops and pistons and playing here.
yeah, so one of the things that Ginny's mentioning is that in the organ, there's pedals on the organ totally different than piano pedals. Piano pedals, we got 3 of them. They're think about it as modulations. They alter the tone. They lift the dampers, make them sustain longer. There's an una quarta pedal that makes it a little bit softer. There's a sostenuto pedal that no one knows what it does. It actually, you hold a note, then you push the pedal down, it grabs just those, but leaves all the other ones clear. They almost never work because people don't know what they are, and it's just, it's the middle pedal. On the organ, down there, it's all notes. There's all the bass notes. It's like a keyboard, big keyboard for your feet. They even have like the white and the black keys. But so I've not done a 4-hand organ duet, but negotiating the
Get along with the
right, because not only can I throw an elbow, but there's knees.
We'd have trouble because we sit at different heights
know,
on the
yeah.
organ. When I substitute for Brian, I have to put the runners underneath to lift me up higher. Brian doesn't play with them. We'd be in big trouble
Yeah,
on
that would be interesting. That's a good point.
Any other questions?
How do you know when to push the pedal?
It's based primarily on harmony, chord changes.
Not on the music.
It's usually
Sometimes it is, but not
sometimes,
usually.
mostly not. In beginner, when you're learning, you get indications for where pedaling is, but we don't have any pedal markings. And it's harmony. It's you hear it, you feel it.
I have another question. I know it's never happened to the 2 of you, but in playing a duet, if somebody gets lost, the other person sort of fill in and keep it going till they
Okay, prime example. I made what I thought was a very obvious mistake in the easiest of the duets that we played. I don't know what my mind was doing, but it wasn't doing the proper thing, and Brian covered for me.
We got right back on track, and no
It
harm,
was
no
a
foul.
measure's worth of, and I'm trying to keep a poker face
Yep.
because, as I tell my students, they only know you've made a mistake if you tell them. And so I was like wanting to crawl under the piano, and Brian heard me. I went, oh. And it's like, keep it straight, keep your poker face working, so no one knows you made the mistake.
But you work together.
You work together, you cover, and then you move on.
Nancy.
Does the music tell you which hand to use for?
Yeah.
Usually. There are times where the way it's written, you're like, oh, it would make more sense for my left hand to come up and grab that part that is written in the right hand. But we both have 2 staves that we read from, and so typically one stave is for the right hand, one stave is for the left hand. Again, there's times where it kind of switches between. There's times where one hand will cover, and sometimes it's music, like it's necessitated from the music. Other times it's just like a personal preference. Like, oh, it's a lot more comfortable for me to play it.
So we get a less music per page because the top two are for Brian, the bottom two are for me. So you have to be sure that when you've turned the page or when you've crossed over that you stick on your own two lines.
Yeah, you got to look at the right line. There's a lot of them. Yeah, Ginny, one more.
I just want to talk about your contemporary, extemporary
Improvisation.
improvise. Who is more in charge of keeping it together in that? I know you were saying you listen to each other, but if you're improvising wildly, is it your job to listen to her part and improvise within her
What else?
or both ways?
Good question. One thing I'll say is with the music that Lynda and I play, there's no improvisation. There's room for interpretation, so that we can have opportunity for expression, for feel, for phrasing. But all our notes are given to us. However, in environments where people are improvising together, where individuals are making music off the cuff without having everything planned out for them, it's got to be democratic. You're all working together. The way I kind of think of it is the music. When you begin the music is happening and the song is moving forward, and it's your job to stay within that. So if I'm improvising, I need to make sure what I do is working within the framework of the piece of music, and that's again where I think Lynn and I work well together. Because I think that in our minds we are feeling the flow of the song at the same time, so that when she pulls back on something, it's almost like I was like, it might be something that we rehearsed, and I know she's going to do that. Other times it's like, oh yeah, I can see how you'd pull back there, and I'll just kind of go with her, and we'll have an instinct of what's the right pacing on that retardando, or how quickly do we want to get softer on that diminuendo. But I feel like it's the greater picture. Everyone is responsible to the music, and you need to make sure that whatever you're doing doesn't sabotage that. Because I could do wild improvisation that would just ruin everything we're doing right here, which is why I'm not.
Well, the guy that does our arrangements, nothing in that second piece did we make up. It was all there for us. But if you listen to like a jazz band where there is free improvisation, you have the drum kit, which is keeping the beat. You have the bass, who's keeping the beat. If you have a keyboard player, they're playing chords, they're keeping a beat.
Providing harmony,
the
too.
guy who's improvising on sax or clarinet or whatever, they can do whatever they want, but they feel the beat. So they know how to keep within the framework of what it is. They can't just disrupt the flow of the whole piece of music, but they have freedom of expression, but they still feel the beat.
They can do whatever they want, but they probably shouldn't do certain things, because it's just like that's just terrible. No one's going to want to listen to that. So again, in your improvisation, you want to make your improvisation work for the music that you're playing. And again, you saw from our second piece where they took a hymn and made it into Scott Joplin music. Like, you can go far, but when you make that choice, now any decision you make within there wants to fit within that ragtime mode and feel. So you want to be in tune with what the music is wanting. And then how can I support that? What can I give to further enhance this music?
Rick?
Just how did the two of you, or duets,
How did we start?
who sits on which side?
I'll tell you. I use the privilege of age and the privilege of eyesight, that I have some serious eye issues, and I just simply told Brian that I'd be happy to play, but I was playing secundo and he would be playing the treble.
Yep.
And
Yep. But it was no discussion or decision. It was, Brian, you're going to play the primo if we do this. And I was like, that sounds great.
and then every time we do one, he's going to do the primo.
Yep. But which is fun for me, because as an accompanist for a choir or for individuals or reading ensembles, I spend my life playing secondo parts. I do the left-hand bass and chords all the time. So the chance to focus on my melodic playing is actually really, really fun for me. And then I get to look at all the ledger lines.
Most of the time, it's got all the runs and all the arpeggios and stuff, and he's younger. He can take.
So before we play
the last piece, does anybody else have any questions?
Are there going to be more four-hand duets in worship of one
Well, we're going to. Okay, so probably everybody knows I am moving, and I am planning for retirement. I've been retired for a while, and I've just gotten my husband on board now. And when our son and daughter-in-law said, "We'd like you to move as close to us as you'd like," voice of God, you don't need to be told again, move. So we are moving. And we're going to give you a hint. We're going to give, I guess, a trailer. We're going to provide a trailer of a piece we're going to play on Easter Sunday.
So you don't
Just
want
a
to
trailer. And trust me, this is not close to the tempo yet, and you'll probably hear some
Yeah, we're going to start reading this. But we thought it would be fun for you guys to hear us do something not well.
not prepared.
And then you can appreciate that, oh, they actually were pretty good on the other stuff, because listen to that one. So this is
really a lot of pages, but we're only going to play.
We're shooting two. Just a sneak preview. And then after this one, we'll play a closing number for you. And thank you all so much for coming and sticking around for this. It's been a lot of fun, and we appreciate the support. So this is the trailer, what's to come. Stay tuned, Easter Sunday.
Okay.
How's this going? Oh, much faster. And I
I'm
just play
dying.
more right notes too.
Well, yeah, it'll be me. It's always me that has the wrong notes. That's the way it's been this morning. I want to just say this last piece that we're going to play is okay. Okay, so when I first started coming to the church, and I've been involved in church music over 50 years, I have never been without doing something. And in my retired stage, I realized I don't need to play a full-time job like Brian does anymore. But I still hoped to be able to contribute. So I introduced myself to Brian, and we sort of have some common friends. Well, we actually do have common friends. And I just said, I'd be happy to sub for you. He took me up on that. And then I think I just said, would you be interested in doing a piano duet? Yes. And that's how it started.
Yep, we did one. We said,
I
that
will
was fun,
say,
let's do it again.
Brian sang my praises at the beginning, so I'm going to sing some praises for Brian right now. In addition to pianists being very possessive and domineering, most musicians, many musicians, are very, I'm going to just say selfish. They're territorial. This is my church. This is my job. I'm the organist. I do the music. Brian is an exception.
That's right.
Brian is an exception. I have been nothing but felt like I was a part of the music program at this church, filling in for Brian, whether it was at rehearsals, substituting for him so he could be gone on a Sunday. I have been so blessed to be associated with Brian because Brian is not selfish. He doesn't have an ego trip about making music in church on Sunday. He's happy to share. And for that, I am truly grateful. And if Brian weren't who he is, we probably wouldn't be doing what we're doing because, again, musicians are notoriously selfish. So,
And to be clear, I do have an ego. Let's not kid ourselves. But it's one where my ego is I want the music at DRC to be glorious and wonderful, and I want to involve people. To me, collaborative music is the best music, and that's coming from. I start off playing piano, and when you play piano, you spend a lot of time by yourself. When I was in my undergrad, I was practicing 6 hours a day. That's 6 hours just by yourself at this keyboard.
in that little cubicle.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember growing up, my friends were in like band and orchestra and stuff, and I had little opportunities here and there, but not quite as many. But when I had those opportunities, like, oh man, this is so much more fun to play music with other people. So I've always sought out collaboration. I've always seek the opportunity to do music with other people, with a group of people. I think it makes it better. God commands it. It's in the Psalms. How many Psalms are about having, we need to lift our voices, we need to sing praise. And it's not, you need to, it's we. It's collaborative and collective. Right.
You are not critical.
I'm very critical.
Well,
I keep
you
to
should
myself.
you should see the two of us together. We're very critical
Yes.
of what we do
Yeah.
together.
If you eavesdrop on Lynn and I, we'll. But
I will say this last piece that we're going to play. We've played this one a couple of times. It is, I think, our favorite.
yep.
I told Brian it's my favorite because it so expresses the Christian faith that I believe. And truly, for me and for Brian, I know I am speaking for Brian too, we do not make music in church to glorify our talent, our ability, ourselves. Anytime that I play in church, and Brian too, it's to the glory of God and to help enhance the worship service. I try to play music that you know words to, even though you may not be able to find the melody sometimes, but that it enhances your worship here in church. And so the last piece that we're going to play is To God Be the Glory, Great Things He Has Done. And that pretty much sums up, I think, everything we feel about making music for church.
Thanks for coming and listening.
So before they start
I think
playing,
It's yours.
That's mine.
before they start playing, for those people in the sanctuary
Yes.
here,
Nope, I got
we
that.
are streaming this to
I've got that
YouTube,
one.
and there will be a recording of it posted. So if you want to see their hands and
So
movement,
you just
I
have
watch
that
the
one.
video.
Yep.
Okay. God help me. places.
We did. Yep. Good. Thank you so much.
Some other ones.